Can we make a rocket stove out of snow? Let's find out. Before we get started, guys, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. That helps the algorithm to know that you want more of this content in the future. So for those of you that don't know what a rocket stove is, it's basically just a really efficient wood-burning stove. And you have air that comes in from the side, and that feeds your fire. It's the point where you burn most of your material and very little smoke goes up through your chimney. So you've got a horizontal hole where air comes in, and a vertical hole where air goes out. And that's where your heat and your fire and everything go out so you can cook or boil water or whatever else you need to do. So today with me, I've obviously got my handy-dandy gloves, and I've got my cheap lighter that I mentioned in another video. I've also got some fire starter that you have seen in other videos as well. Again, guys, if you want to see a video in the future breaking down how to make these, just let me know by dropping a comment below. In addition to those, I'll be using the mighty stick. We're going to put a bunch of snow around this, and the hole that's left when we pull this out is going to act as our chimney. And of course, we can't make a video without using our Pathfinder mug. So a friend sent me information on building a rocket stove out of snow, and I looked at it and figured let's make a video about it and find out if we can do this together. It makes sense because of the insulating properties of snow. When you consider structures like igloo and other shelters and take into consideration that they usually have fires in those, it's not a stretch of the imagination to think that maybe we can make a rocket stove out of snow. So let's find out. I'm going to move the camera and then we'll get started. Alright, to start this off, I'm going to pack some snow around this log. And this will act as a good starting point for us to roll this in the snow, kind of like a snowman. That's the plan, at least. We're going to see how that works. That did not work. We're going to start this again. I remember every year when I was a kid, we watched the Frost the Snowman cartoon, and that's kind of what this reminds me of. And then, if you haven't seen that cartoon, cover your ears, because I'm going to give away some spoilers. At the end, Frosty melts, and hopefully our rocket stove doesn't melt. Alright, now let's try to roll this around. I think I'm going to break up that snow first. So rolling is probably not going to be the best use of your time, unless you have a very specific texture of snow. So I'm just going to build it here, and then we're going to dig in our vertical tunnel for airflow. So I want the walls to be thick, but I don't want it to be so thick that it's obnoxious, and that it takes too much time to actually be viable. If you have not watched the video about melting snow and whether or not that's safe to drink, make sure you go back and do that, because these two kind of go hand in hand and are part of winter survival skills. So both would be good information to know if you're ever stuck out in the wilderness in the snow. Alright, moment of truth. Let's pull this out like Arthur, King Arthur, and the sword in the stone. Alright, we've got a nice deep tunnel. The way that I built this, most of the weight's leaning that way. So I think I'm going to come in from this side. But before I do that, I'm going to move the camera so you guys can see. So I thought about leaving the camera as high as it was, but I lowered it so you guys can get kind of a closer view to see what I'm doing. I'm going to use a smaller stick because I don't want to shove this thing in there and destroy the structure that I just spent a few minutes making. So I'm going from the side. I'm going to watch down into the hole, go up here, Looks fine. Just gonna kind of wiggle this around. I want it to be big enough to have sufficient airflow, but not so big that it topples the structure, if that makes sense. Alright, so made a nice little plate in there, nice little shelf. Open this up just a little bit so I can get my kindling and my lighter in there. Alright guys, now's the moment of truth. We made our makeshift rocket stove out of snow, of all things. I'm going to shove this paper in there, try to start a fire, and then I'm going to put this fire starter in there and see what we can do. So when using a rocket stove, one of the things you want to keep in mind is to use small fuel sources, and that helps it to burn a little bit more efficiently. Got a little bit of wind. Alright. Paper's going, guys. Alright, I don't know how well it's coming through on camera, but this is definitely smoking. And the snow's not melting, so I'm going to stick this fire starter in there and get that thing started as well. We have fire in our snow-made, homemade rocket stove. I'm gonna get some water to boil it. So again, guys, the idea is that the air comes in from the side hole, hits our fuel source, burns that so completely that very little smoke comes out the chimney, but most of what we have on top is heat. Now right now, I feel a considerable amount of heat at the top, but I don't see a whole lot of snow melting. So I'm gonna stick this pot on there and see if we can't boil some water with our homemade rocket stove made out of snow. So we've got a little bit of smoke coming out this side right now, but I assume that's probably because of the fact that we're covering most of our chimney. Cup's heating up. Alright guys, we're battling dark and the flame died down a little bit, so I threw a couple discs in that from this set. You probably recognize this from a different video. I'll leave a link in the description below, and there may or may not be a product review coming in the future. So I can feel quite a bit of warmth coming now. Let's set our mug on top to keep boiling, and we'll come back to it. So I'll point out that we've got a raging fire inside of basically a snow cone. So I'm going to hold on to this cup a little bit because as it heats up, it does actually start melting the snow. The snow is doing pretty well against the fire, but the cup, it's starting to melt the snow. So if I were to do this out in the wilderness, and I had this cup and some kind of camp set or something with me, I'd probably set like the top of a solo stove or something like that on top of the fire. I don't know what all you would do with this. I'm sure you probably wouldn't sit here like this holding a pot to boil some water. And you'd probably not stick this right on top of it. But I just want to do this to show that we can actually boil water with a homemade and snow-made rocket stove. Alright, so our mug is quite hot. We're getting some steam. So we should be to a boil pretty soon. So this is cooking right along. You can see all the steam coming out of there. And just as a reminder, as with any fire, don't be afraid to add some additional fuel source to it so that it doesn't go out. Guys, I don't know if you can see it, but there are some baby bubbles in there. So we have officially boiled water with a homemade, snow-made rocket stove. Now, it's not a rolling boil yet, but I'm not going to sit out here and hold this cup and wait for it to come to a rolling boil. So to me, I think this is a mission accomplished. It is a viable option, but I think there's some extra steps that should be taken if you're going to boil water like this. So keep that in mind if you ever have to use this. I don't know if you would ever actually have to use it in the wilderness, but it was a fun experiment, and it's a good little tool to have in your toolbox, I guess. So I'm going to take this out of here. Yeah, that's definitely cooking. The cool thing about this, we don't have a huge fire area to try to put out or anything like that. So when we're done with our fire, there's still a considerable amount of heat coming up from here. When we're done with our fire, and I almost don't want to do this because this is kind of a cool project. This is kind of a cool concept. So, but anyway, we're going to do this. We can just push this baby down. Let that set and melt, and mission accomplished, guys. So as we just demonstrated, you can in fact build a rocket stove out of snow. That was our homemade snow-made rocket stove, and we effectively boiled water with that. If you found the information in this video helpful, or you just had fun with it, share, comment, let me know what you think, and like and subscribe so you don't miss future content like this. As always, guys, get outside. And of course, we can't make a video without using our hat. Don't be afraid to let this tractor go by before you start talking and looking like a ding-dong.